Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I am here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, how you doing, bro?
I'm not bad, mate. Not bad at all. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. And we've got an interesting bit of news. You guys would have seen from the title. Matty Cash to Atletico Madrid. It's a video I don't think we expected to make. It's something that was kind of bandied about earlier on in the January transfer window, Dan. But we thought we'd address it here because there have been some more reports. But before we get into that, we have a message from today's video sponsor. Dan, have you ever wanted an app that collates all the scores and news from your favourite teams in the whole of Europe, Dan? Have you ever wanted that?
It's a constant need of mine, mate, because there's always news. That's the thing, is that we love this game. We love the industry of football because it's ever changing, mate, and you need a place to keep up with it all.
And we have that place exactly for you
sure
guys. It's OneFootball. Guys, this app is it's life-changing.
It's great because I use it. So it's great because it's where I pull the stats from for the podcast. So it's like there's all that new stuff as well, but you can track all of the players' stats from like across Europe for all the different leagues, for continental football as well. It's a dream. It's a dream. And the best part, mate, is it's free.
It's free, and guys, it would help support the channel massively if you check that OneFootball using the link in the description down below. We promise you guys won't be disappointed. So guys, if you haven't checked out OneFootball, we'd really appreciate it if you did. They're really happy with how you guys have been engaging and interacting with the app. It helps them out, it helps us out, and Dan and I would just really appreciate it if you haven't already. You check out OneFootball using the top link in the description. Now, to get on to the main subject of the video, Dan, Cash to Atletico. Fabrizio Romano yesterday was tweeting saying that they're very interested. And we know Atletico are partial to a English right back, although Kashi is representing Poland now. It's an interesting one. And again, as we mentioned at the top, mate, there was whispers about this in January, and we decided not to cover it. I feel like we may have mentioned it in a podcast, but we didn't dedicate a whole episode to it because it was just one of them ones. It felt like there was bigger things going on, and perhaps it wouldn't happen. But I think the fact that this one's come back, mate, does suggest that there is an element of truth in the interest from Atletico.
Yeah, I would say so, mate. It seems pretty nailed on that they're going to try and go for Matty quite heavy in the summer. There's quite a big fee involved as well, which is where who have really changed how they operate in the financial market in recent years. I think there's often a feeling that Atletico sort of had an underdog mentality, that they don't go and spend the big bucks, that Simeone has a very specific type of player that he wants to attract, and he's very shrewd with his business, and he picks up these players that are going to come in and fit into a team that are more than a sum of its parts. Whereas I think if you actually look over the last sort of 5 years or so, they've spent quite a lot on a lot of players, bringing in players on high wages. The João Felix deal is the one that stands out. So that they are a club. They've brought back Griezmann in recent years. They've brought back Luis Suarez. There's quite a lot of players who are coming to this team, maybe on not necessarily high fees, but high wages as well. So they are big spenders in today's market, Atletico. And I think this one, people felt it was a little bit strange, but I think actually there's perhaps a bit more sense to it than meets the eye.
I think, yeah, definitely. When you look at the stats, and as you kind of alluded to there, mate, the profile of player that Simeone generally likes, everybody knows that, when you watch Atleti in Europe, they set up with two banks of four. And they are very much a counter-attacking team, soak up all the pressure for as long as possible and look to hit each of their opponents on the break. Now, Kashi is within the top 5 percentile of fullbacks when it comes to blocks and clearances, averaging 3.2 clearances per 90 and 2.7 blocks per 90. Alongside that, we've got about 16.5 pressures per 90, 3 tackles. Again, these are all things that these are must-haves for a Simeone fullback, the quintessential fullback, or just player in general, really, in any sort of Diego Simeone system. So you can completely understand why Kashi is being profiled here. And again, I have been a big believer on this podcast. I've been very vocal. He has to improve his attacking output. He's only scored 1 goal. He hasn't got any assists so far this season for Aston Villa. That end product needs to improve. Otherwise, I've always felt like there is the potential that Matty Cash is going to leave the club. And I think this kind of leads us on nicely, mate, to a discussion that I feel like we need to have, because we've been, we spoke a lot on the loans and the people going out and the sort of the sentimentality that I feel like we may have towards players like Anwar and Trez and Keenan and Jed and these kind of players. Eventually, these guys have to leave the club. And as sad as that may be for some or not so much for others, that's a completely different debate. They're not going to command high transfer fees. Sometimes, and it happens a lot in football, and it hasn't really happened with us much recently because, we haven't had the best squad or the highest value players, but sometimes you have to let someone go. That's just how it works. You have to make some money in the transfer market. Sure, our owners are rich, but in terms of balancing the books, which is incredibly important over a 3-year period for financial fair play, sometimes you have to sell someone. And it feels like for the past sort of 2 weeks, I think we were maybe, Dan, preparing ourselves for Dougie being that guy. And correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't really seen a fee being bandied about, but I don't believe Cashy leaves for anything less than £30 million. I mean,
I think
do we complain if Cash is that guy?
I saw like 40 million chucked about, but I mean, I don't know, mate. I don't know.
I mean, do you say no to 40 million for Matty Cash? A player who we paid £14 million for 2 seasons ago. And
I think,
according to Transfer Marks, he's valued at 18 million. I feel like you can replace a right back, and I feel like there is a replacement at the club in Kane Kessler-Hayden. Whether he's ready or not just yet, that is a completely different question. But I feel like perhaps maybe losing Matty isn't as much of a big deal as it is maybe losing a John McGinn or an Ezri Konsa or even an Emi Martinez. Again, you got to think of these players who are going to command a high sell-on fee.
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways you have to look at this transfer. There's one that Matty Cash is obviously going to want to go and play for Atletico Madrid. This is a once-in-a-lifetime move for someone that has been playing for Nottingham Forest for the majority of their career to date. This is something that he is definitely going to want to do, and I do not begrudge him that transfer at all. He's come on to Villa. He's come on in leaps and bounds. I think the one thing that, his offensive output isn't going to be hard to replace. I think his energy and the way that he approaches games and the way that he plays games at 100 miles an hour, that's something that's a little bit more difficult to find. But I don't think it's quite, impossible to pick that up. If you look at Luca Dean, he's a top level fullback, but he doesn't get up and down the wing at the same pace, at the same ferocity that Matty Cash does. So it goes to show that even when you're looking in top level fullbacks, sometimes they don't bring that. And I think it's important to have that because we're not a side that's blessed with pace. And I'm not saying whilst Matty Cash is the fastest player in the world, he is a player that I can't think of a Villa player that spends more game time sprinting than he does. So someone that is responsible for a lot of energy that this side brings. And I think that's difficult. But as I said, his offensive output isn't. And I think that's why, people are saying that like Matty Cash hasn't got the goals, he hasn't got the assists to back up a move to this kind of club. And I think it's important to preface that you don't need to for Atletico Madrid. That's not what Simeone looks for in his fullbacks. Everyone's saying that this feels a little bit weird. It did with Kieran Trippier. Kieran Trippier came off a World Cup where he was absolutely brilliant, then had the ultimate World Cup catfish season where he was dreadful for Tottenham in the season before he got the move to Atletico Madrid. He was awful compared to his World Cup form, and everyone thought exactly the same thing. And Simeone turned him around and made him into a player that they've gone on and flipped and sent back to the Premier League at a far higher standard than he was when he was at Tottenham. Simeone will do the same again. Matty Cash, he's got the 1 goal for Villa this season. But I think, Kieran Trippier played 86 games for Atletico Madrid in all competitions and only picked up 11 assists. It's not a crazy haul. It's not a massive reason not a massive thing that Simeone looks for in his fullbacks for goals and assists. You know, Renan Lodi, someone who's played 17 games in La Liga this season, has 1 assist in La Liga. Marcos Llorente, who's like probably the best, he's a wonderful footballer, one of the best Swiss Army knives in world football, has filled in at right back a lot this season. He's got 1 assist this season. Simo Vasalko, 1 assist. So it's not like, you know, Simeone is wanting some great, like most of the top clubs in the world, wanting Andy Robertsons on Trents that are going to go and pick you up double-digit assist tallies every single season. It's not what he looks for. He needs that energy. He needs that tenacity to make his side want to fear again, because they're not at the moment in La Liga. Right back is definitely a position after Kieran Trippier left that they need to address. It's not been a great season. I think it actually makes more sense than people are claiming. Matty Cash has sort of really come into the spotlight, I think, since he made the move to Poland and play international football. That's a big deal for him. I think, you know, Atletico Madrid aren't the title chasing, you know, side that got to the Champions League final, 6-7 years ago. They're a side now that are scrapping it out for the Champions League, for the European spots. You know, they're in 4th place at the moment. They're only above the Europa League spots by 2 points. And they've got Barcelona and Sociedad behind them, who are 2 very mean sides indeed. They concede more goals than they have done in previous seasons. You know, they've conceded more goals this season than anyone in the top 10 out in La Liga. So it's a side that needs defensive reinstallment. Simeone is losing his way a little bit. He's even gone away from the 4-4-2. You know, we think when they came to Anfield earlier this season, they played a 3-5-2. So those energetic wing backs that could just get up and down that flank and do their bit on the defensive end is what Simeone is looking for. And I think Matty Cash stands up to that, mate.
I think he does. And again, you know, it kind of comes back to that point. Like, we can't just hold on to players forever. Like, as nice as it would be, like, to have plucked Matty Cash in the Championship, and he's the right back that takes us to the Champions League or the Europa League or whatever that may be, for only £40 million, that just isn't, like, it's not viable. It's not sustainable. Money has to come in somehow. And if it is 40 million, which you've seen, Dan, then that is mental. And I think anybody would be stupid to turn that down, including Matty. And I don't think anyone would begrudge him moving to, you know, the reigning La Liga champions as well. Let's not forget they're having a rough time now. Second season syndrome after winning the title, but you know, realistically, they're still going to want to be competing for the domestic competitions, looking to make it far in Europe. I know it's looking a bit difficult at the moment, but I think Kashi ultimately losing Trippier has it's really affected the balance of that team, mate. So it seems like it's an absolute must for Atleti to get done in the summer. Obviously, we kind of heard this a little bit in January. I think Villa would have been stupid to let him go in January, completely stupid, after only 4 months of Kane Kessler playing at Swindon. We've loaned him to MK Dons now, which is brilliant. He's playing a whole new league, a whole new step up. I think if this happens, I think it will, one, completely depend on how the duration of this loan does go for Kane Kessler, and two, the fee, and three, again, because Kane Kessler's a fantastic fullback. I'm so excited for what he can offer to the club. Watching him in the FA Cup and seeing some clips of him at Swindon, it's been fantastic to see. He's having it's a breakout season for him in many ways. And he's one of the crop that you just know is going to make it, whether it's at Villa or not. He's going to be playing football at a very good level. But, there will be fair questions raised. Can he do it in the Premier League? Will he be able to do it for where Villa are looking to be competing? So that kind of brings me on, Dan. Villa will probably have to recruit a fullback. I don't think we're going to see Freddie G play for Villa ever again. I just don't see it happening. I actually think Gerrard would like him, if I'm being completely honest. But this is a player who was recruited when we were a mid-table Championship side. And there's a lot of clamour for Gilbert. But I think one thing that I preface, and as brilliant as well as all of Kashi's defensive stats are, Gilbert was the same. There was no attacking output. Everybody loved the sliding tackles. And as a defender myself, mate, I love it. But if you're having to make a sliding tackle, if you're having to make that last-ditch challenge, you've made an error. Something has gone wrong. You have let the winger come inside, or you have there's been a lapse in concentration if you're having to make that challenge more often than not. So Gilbert won't be at the club. Dan, I'm going to throw a name out there. I want to know your thoughts on this as well. And again, if there's a name who you have, mate, I'd love to discuss. And I know this is a player who I think a lot of people had eyes on during the Euros and is having a great season at Inter Milan after his transfer from PSV. Denzel Dumfries. I really want this. I think this fits the bill so well. He's standing at 6'2", which would add some height to the defence. He isn't your defensive fullback by any means. He is the modern fullback. You guys will have remembered the goals he scored in the summer. He's within the top 4 percentile of aerials won for fullbacks, and his attacking stats are just stupid, man. Within the top 1 percentile of non-penalty XG, top 3 percentile of non-penalty goals, top 10 percentile of shots taken by fullbacks per 90 with about 1.5, an XA of 0.18 per 90. This guy's fantastic. 2.9 shot creating actions per 90. He's playing in a back three, but he is this is the profile of player that Gerrard has brought in with Dean. And I think if Kashi goes, Denzel he's the guy. He's the guy I want to come in and to really nail down that right back spot, mate.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant shout, mate. And I think that perfectly replaces that energy that I'm talking about. I think there's a player that, there's a player there that I think, as you said, mate, it fits the bill really nicely. And I think he's a very good age, and I think it fits the profile for the club in many ways, actually. I think I really have I have such hope, and I don't know if I see it through rose tinted specs, but I love Sergino Dest, and
oh wow,
he's a player that hasn't. It's always linked. He's always been linked with a move out of Barcelona. Pretty much ever since he got there, he's not a player that they've come to depend on. He was linked with a move out on loan in January, and I always think that that's someone I would love to have seen come to the Premier League. So I think, but Dumfries, mate, Dumfries is a player that the way that he rumbles up that right hand side. You think of other fullbacks in world football that can do it as well as he can. Lucas Klosterman comes to mind. The way that he can get up and down that right wing. So there are definitely players out there that can do it, mate. And I think now that we're shopping in that kind of bracket, if you've got that Luca Dean on one side, it shows that we're going to go for somebody of a similar stature, similar profile, similar kind of player on that right-hand side. Then I think these are names that are very much possible, mate, because I think we're shopping in quite an elite tier when it comes to fullbacks now.
Yeah, and what surprises me about Dumfries as well is he's only 25. It kind of feels like he's been around for a while. Like he's a player who I can't say I'd seen too much of at PSV, but he's one that you were always aware of. He was kind of waiting for that big moment, and seeing him in the Euros, that was his breakout, and he's having a fantastic season for Inter. And we all know the money troubles that they're having. I believe he signed for around 20 million euros. And I think if you come in, with a 25 million pound, 30 million pound bid, straight in, use that money from cash. I don't really see a world where Inter reject that, considering the financial troubles. And Dest is a really interesting shout as well, mate, because it's just not happened, has it, for Barcelona? No. There's so much promise there. And
he's a fantastic player, mate. Fantastic.
He really is. He really is. And I think he's an Adidas athlete, and he's American. So there's the ties with both Nassef and Wes there. I think given the Las Vegas Villains project, which is coming along nicely, and I think we'll probably warrant a video at some point, Dan. Doing a proper deep dive into what's the operation that's going on there. I think it makes sense, and there is a pool of fantastic American talent right now, and Dest is very much a part of that, albeit not having as good of a time as some of the other guys. But I honestly think that's a good shout, and I think my only sort of complaint would be, again, you're almost going from proven with Sergino.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it would be a bit of a gamble. But again, can we take advantage of Barcelona and their financial situation again? With the 4-1 rule in La Liga, they're going to have to shift players. I can't imagine Sergino's on a lot of money, particularly. But if we can take Coutinho and Dest off them in the sub, mate, man, what a window.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. It would be very interesting to see what happens. I think if anything's done, it's all going to be done in the summer. You know, we said on the last pod, mate, that Stevie's got this big transfer kitty. And I think, you know, if Atletico are going to come in and give us a decent bit of cash for Matty, then that only increases. And I think the academy boys, it's going to be really interesting to integrate them, because it was far less of a risk when we were sort of in the bottom half of the Premier League table and even behind closed doors. You know, it was a really nice opportunity to come and bed some players into that team and give them that run out when they haven't got the stress of crowds or anything like that. But now it's a lot more difficult, because we haven't got the time to necessarily play players and allow them to make mistakes and allow them to find their way naturally in the game, because we're in this sort of race against time to get into Europe. So those guys are Kane, Kessler, Hayden, bloody hell, mate. It's going to be hard to say that around it, because, you know, once I've had a few beers at games and stuff like that, that's going to be very difficult if he's playing regularly. But no, once he's embedded himself into the team, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of trajectory Villa can keep up. So yeah, I think how we approach that is also going to be very interesting.
For sure, man. And guys, we'd love to know your thoughts on the right back situation. I think it's fair to say, Dan, we both adore Kashi, but it would be hard to turn down £40 million. So we'd love to know what you guys have to say on that matter. And again, before we go, we'd really appreciate if you guys checked out OneFootball using the top link in the description. They've renewed our campaign, which is brilliant. It helps us out to no end. And yeah, I mean, as a result of this, there's going to be more content coming. I think we're bringing the previews back. I'm hoping we're bringing the previews back. I think that's probably a good way to keep the interaction going. I know you guys really enjoyed the previews, so we're going to try our hardest to keep them coming to you guys as regularly as we can. So yeah, make sure you're subscribed and hit that bell button so you never miss a video from us here at Heart of the Holte, up the Villa.